Good afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Development Regulatory Services Committee for today, November 29th, which is the last committee meeting for 2016. That's why there's such a long agenda. I want to make it easy for those of you who are here for a consent item. These are items 21, 22, 23, 4, 5, 6, and 7. In addition to that, we'll also take on our consent agenda items 31 and 32. Are there any items on that agenda anyone would like to pull for discussion? I'll just note, Councilmember Rasami, did you want to say something about item 24, please, which is the grant agreement with Hennepin County for the Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center, which is a partnership between the city and Hennepin County, as well as a number of other entities, has been something I've been working on for the last 2.5 years. And we are, glad that it's coming to fruition. And I would like to thank Hennepin County, all the staff at the county, Commissioner Peter McLaughlin, and our good friend who's been working on this for a long time. Thank you very much.
So the consent agenda, I'll move the consent agenda. Further comments or questions on those items? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. We'll then also note that item number 20, which is on our quasi-judicial public hearing agenda, is being postponed until January 3rd. So if you're here for that item, that will happen on January 3rd. And I'll note that item number 30, which is a rental license denial, will come up during our quasi-judicial public hearing portion of the agenda, which will be after the presentations and land sales. With that, we'll start with item number 1, which is our annual Employment and Training Partner of the Year Awards, and I would invite Deb Barhelgen to come up to give the presentation.
Chair Goodman and members of the committee, I'm here to thank you so much for allowing us to do this presentation today. We're honored to be able to honor the work of our great partners. I'm here to introduce to you the chair of our workforce board, Laura Beath. Laura Beath is the System Director of Talent Acquisition for Fairview Health Services and the current chair of the Minneapolis Workforce Development Board. Laura is passionate and a visionary leader who has worked for the past 25 years to strengthen Minnesota's healthcare workforce. And she is currently the state chair of the Governor's Workforce Development Board. So I'll turn it over to Laura.
Laura, welcome.
Thank you so much.
You can use the microphones in front of you. If you want to step forward and face the audience, you can use the roving mic.
Okay. Well, we have good news today. So we are going to recognize 2 of our partners. And so we'll start with the adult partner. So we're going to be recognizing the 2016 City of Minneapolis Youth Service and Partner of the Year, which is Resource. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about them, then I'm going to have them stand up so everyone in the room can see the award winner. Serving the community since 1960, Resource is a full-service nonprofit that increases well-being through recovery, employment, and career advancement. Resource has served more than 18,000 people each year, and they're one of the largest workforce development nonprofit organizations in Minnesota, and they support individuals in all stages of their work and career. And they place nearly 5,000 people a year annually. That's amazing, especially in these times with the shortages we have in workforce. They've been a long partner with the City of Minneapolis, Minneapolis Employment and Training, and we're recognizing them today. So I'd like to ask Kelly Matter and her team, if her team is here to stand, but Kelly, come on over. We want to make sure that we are recognizing you and commending you for your just enormous contributions. So come on over. We're going to hand this to you. Deb's going to hand this to you. I'm going to list off some of the work that's been underway with the youth initiatives. First of all, they've provided 95 participants with comprehensive individualized education, employment, and training services. 23 participants have had individual internship projects. 30 individuals have had industry-specific credentials, and they've just done a broad range of recruitment strategies as well. They've consistently gotten A and A+ ratings throughout the year, which is amazing. and 71% of their older youth have been able to find employment that's unsubsidized. So 100% of the youth remain employed after 90 days, and the list goes on and on. So again, thank you for your teamwork and your partnership. You've been an amazing partner. And so we just want to wish you well and recognize you with this contribution and your award. So everyone, if you want to just give them a hand. Yeah.
You don't, please step forward. We'd happy to have you make some comments. You don't need to use that microphone. Just speak into these. Perfect.
Excellent. I would like to be brief, and I would like to invite Kia to join me up here. We brought someone who's received services from us. So ever so briefly, I just want to say, Chairperson and council members, how honored Resource is to receive this recognition this year, and how appreciative we are for our very long-term partnership with the city of Minneapolis. We have a very small, two-person, small but mighty team who accomplish all of the things that were listed and who go above and beyond every single day to serve the youth. And Kia is just one of the many youth we've served, and she would like to say a few words. Thank you.
Please do. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, everyone, for having me today. My name is Shakia Kendrick, and I've been working with Resource for about 3 years now. Before I got into the Youth Futures program, I really didn't have a high school diploma. I didn't know where I was going with my career path, and I just didn't really have an idea of where I would go. Since enrolling into the program, I've received my GED. I've completed CNA training. I am now enrolled in college for my BSN degree. I will be soon opening my own business. It's called Heaven Beauty's Boutique. And one day I hope to work for Resource. And I just hope to do that to help young girls like me who were in the position, who felt like they weren't able to accomplish their dreams and just who felt like they weren't able to make it. And I just want to let them know that everyone is capable. So I thank you guys for having me today, and I'm very honored, and it's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Before we move on, I just wanted to hear from Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That was tremendous. Congratulations to Resource, and for your partnership, for being such a long-term partner in the city is just amazing, since 1960. Someday when I open my own business, I'm going to say since 1962. It makes sense. But Ms. Kendrick, how impressive you are. And I think you represent everything that the organization's wanting to do, but more importantly, you represent everything Minneapolis wants and our young people. So to provide those opportunities is just really heartwarming for us. And to see all those results, the list of achievements is remarkable, especially when considering it's such a small team that makes such effective use of those resources to build on and support each other. So thank you very much for your contributions, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to our second award winner. And so again, it's exciting to share the news. This award winner is, since for over 100 years, has been serving the community. So since in 2016, we want to recognize Jewish Family and Children's Services of Minneapolis as the outstanding adult service provider for their strong performance with the WIOA adult program. They've been a nonprofit human service organization with a mission to provide essential services to people of all ages and backgrounds to sustain healthy relationships, ease suffering, and offer support in times of need. Since 1910. Amazing. They've been assisting Eastern European Jewish immigrants to resettle in Minneapolis. They also formed their board of directors and volunteers, and they've helped receive financial and employment assistance along with medical care. In 1914, the agency hired its first staff member to provide professional services to families. Since that time, they've expanded their staff from 1 person to 130. They had a handful of volunteers, now they're at 900, and they provide a full spectrum of programs to address the crucial needs of over 16,000 people each year. They've provided enormous outreach, intake, eligibility determination, and assessment throughout Minneapolis, and they've worked with Minneapolis Employment and Training for individual referrals since 2005. They've expanded their role to also provide WIOA adult case management services to low-income individuals who have barriers to employment. They've also, in one of my special areas, they've provided short-term training to focus high-demand healthcare career pathways, providing clients with better-paying jobs and well-defined career areas. They've had comprehensive vocational assessments, and they've developed training plans to meet each and individual client. They've had the extensive counseling, and they've helped their clients negotiate better salaries, and they've consistently had a performance of an A rating throughout the year. In 2016, they've had 20 customers successfully complete their training, and their average salary or hourly wage was over $14.30 an hour. That's an 18% increase from the time of enrollment. So again, congratulations. 90% of their WIA adult clients were persons of color. 48% had no education beyond high school or GED, and 36% were single parents. So we really want to recognize all their efforts. So I'm going to ask that Margie Earhart, Leah Temkin, Lee Truer, and Sheila Howard stand up, as well as the rest of their staff, to be recognized. Come up and say something? Amazing. Over 100 years.
Yeah,
So
something to be very proud of. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this award. In addition to the work that we just talked about, we've also been working with the MSP Tech Hire Initiative and helping people get into jobs in the IT area. And so we have a couple of staff who've helped with that too, which has been an exciting additional partnership with Minneapolis Employment and Training. I want to give all the credit to the staff. They are outstanding. They work so hard to find the people who need the help, because they're not always aware that the services are out there. And so part of our job is to make sure that they know that the city of Minneapolis is providing funds to get them into these jobs and into a lifetime that is so different from what they've ever had before. So it's heartwarming, it's wonderful. We've been doing it for 100 years, and we plan to do it for more than 100 more. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
So I just wanted to make a few comments about JFCS. As many of you know, I recently joined the board of JFCS. So while this is an award for a year's worth of work, and in many ways 100 years worth of work, it gives me great pride to be associated with an organization whose staff has really reached out to so many. And as I've learned more about the organization, I want you to know this is an organization that serves the entire community where there is need. It is not a Jewish-focused organization in any of these workforce, employment, training, tech hire, healthcare initiatives. This is for a program for people who are most in need, often in areas where the Jewish community historically was and has left. And so I think the connection to where the Jewish community started and the new immigrant and minority populations that have come after them and the work that they're doing to serve that population is really meaningful to the city, and I think to everybody in this room. We don't brag enough about the work that our partners do with the money that we're allocated by the federal government and is passed through to you to do this amazing work. I also just want to point out that the leader, Judy Halper, is here. If you just stand, Judy, one of the most respected people in services and in the service sector in the state of Minnesota, if not beyond. I appreciate your time in coming down today to support your amazing staff, who I understand, as we all do, even in our situation at the city, the staff do all the work. And we know that, and we appreciate your staff and everything they've done. So congratulations to you, and thank you for being here today. Thank you, Deb. The second presentation we have today is actually confirming the designation of Greg Russ as the new Executive Director of the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. We will have a staff presentation by Chuck Lutz, followed by an introduction by the chair of the search committee, Tom D'Angelo, and the chair of the board, Clayton Tyler, and then we'll ask Mr. Russ to come up and see if there are any questions for him from anyone in the audience. And I will note that council members had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Russ in 2 separate meetings today, and some people did have the opportunity to do that, and I want to thank you for making him available to everyone before the hearing today. Mr. Lutz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very pleased to be here today to ask the council to confirm Gregory Russ as the new MPHA director. Mr. Russ, and we'll talk more about this, has a long history in the public housing field, is an innovative, cutting-edge leader, and we are very happy to have secured his services after about a year-long process. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Commissioner Tom D'Angelo, who actually headed the search committee for MPHA, and then next our board chair, F. Clayton Tyler, followed then by Greg Russ.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Lutz? Seeing none, Mr. D'Angelo, welcome.
Thank you. Again, my name is Tom D'Angelo. I'm a commissioner for the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority and chaired the search committee. We were involved in that search committee process for over a year now. And during that period of time, we set up a process to get us to where we are today, which is to have you meet Greg Russ. During our process over the course of the last year, we've had numerous touch points with staff, with residents, with various community members, and we reached out as a group to a number of national partners as well to get input into what are the criteria we should be looking for the new executive director of MPHA. And so today, last week at our Board of Commissioners meeting, MPHA Board of Commissioners meeting, we voted, and unanimously they supported the recommendation of Greg Russ as the new executive director. So as Chuck mentioned, Greg is from Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's been there 12 years. He'll probably talk a little more about that today. But we felt he was a real strong national expert on housing, having worked for complex housing agencies around the country and working with HUD as well. So with that, I'd like to turn over the mic to Commissioner Clayton Tyler, the chair of our board.
Chair Tyler, welcome.
Thank you. Council members, first of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to speak today. Minneapolis Public Housing had a great search committee. I'd like to thank all of the people that served on that particular committee. And I'd like to give special thanks to Councilmember Goodman for her leadership on that committee and her very, very important voice on the committee. Minneapolis Public Housing has had the same executive director for 25 years. It's hard to change. Cora McCorvey has done a very, very good job in working with public housing over her time period there. It's sad to see her go on the one hand, but it's exciting to see us come up with a new executive director, and we're very excited about our selection. As Tom D'Angelo mentioned, he is one of the premier leaders in public housing in the nation. I would say in the top 5 in the nation, and we're really excited to present this particular selection to this council. As the board chair, I'm looking very forward to working with developing a personal relationship with the council and with all the other housing partners so that we can work together in a regional concept with public housing being at the forefront of it along with the city council. And so having said all that, I'd like to introduce Greg Russ to you and ask that you confirm our recommendation. I think we've got a very good candidate. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Mr. Russ, welcome. Perhaps you could say a few words, and we'll see if there's any questions from anyone on the committee.
Thank you so much, and I would just like to say thanks to both Clayton and Tom for their introductions, and also it's a great privilege to be here, and I really look forward to serving if you affirm the appointment of the board. Briefly, I have been at the Cambridge Housing Authority for 12 years and have been in the business over 40 years. And I have had the opportunity to work in large and small housing authorities across the country. And when several years ago, my wife and I decided, my wife being from Minneapolis, to return here, I hadn't actually thought about this being potential, but it has certainly matured into that, and I'm very pleased that the opportunity has presented itself. I want to say thanks to Council and the committee for considering this, and if there are questions, I would be glad to take some questions from the members.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Kano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome.
Thank
you. It's good to know that you've already been in the city before. I read the Star Tribune article that was published about you on November 10th. Can you talk a little bit more about what you believe your relationship will be with residents moving forward, especially around projects that have gotten a lot of attention, like the Glendale Homes project? Just what do you think will be your interface with community residents and specifically residents who live in the public housing?
Sure. If I could just give an example from one of the efforts in Cambridge, we have the same kind of capital deficit, if I could use that word, at many of our properties. And we have been working on our capital planning and developing a capital plan for about 8 years. And I would say that at every step of the way, whether we were spending federal money or the city has a housing trust, we've engaged the residents very directly. And there's several things about that. One is we're in their homes, so it's important for us to understand that and to indicate if we have plans, whether they're to rehab or redevelop, that we do respect that. And secondly, a lot of things that we've learned from the residents. The ways the buildings work, the way the site doesn't or does not work. And the third thing is that we have taken a lot of steps to make sure that the residents understand exactly what it is we're trying to do in order to raise the capital funds that we're trying to invest in these units. And that means meeting with them both in small and large groups, meeting with them at their properties, meeting with them at offices, and engaging them in a conversation. And the conversation is about what should happen at the property, how that should look, and what are the things that we need to do to make sure they're comfortable with that.
Have you been able to meet with Glendale residents?
Not yet, no. I'm actually not in the job till council confirms on, the full council confirms. So one of the things I'll do once I get started is plan to have some kind of series of meetings with them.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about this piece? This is my last question, Councilmember
Sure.
Goodman. There's a component here about the aggressive use of the federal rental assistance demonstration program, which allows agencies to convert public housing to privately owned, development projects. Can you talk about your philosophy and your framework and how you would apply that to the Minneapolis public housing context?
Well, I would just offer a couple observations on the statement. Cambridge is moving its entire portfolio out of public housing into the rental assistance demonstration. And the reason we're doing that primarily is to raise capital to invest back into the properties. Now, in order to do that, it is true, we do have to take on a private partner, but that does not mean that the housing authority gives up control of the site or the ultimate control of what happens at that property. In other words, when we make this investment, we're actually thinking in terms of a 40-year investment, and that property is not lost for low-income families, that it's retained. And without getting into the details of these real estate transactions, our reason for using the rental assistance demonstration is that we had properties that were in great needs. Senior buildings, for example, family sites, and we could not raise the kind of capital that we needed to raise without using RAD. I might take exception with the use of the word aggressive in the sense that it really was our only path. But when we submitted our RAD applications, we did not have a single objection to those because we really spent a lot of time letting people understand how this program was going to work, what protections we could provide for them, and what protections we could provide for the long-term use of the property. So it's not something where I feel like the families are going to be harmed by the conversion. In fact, we went to great lengths to retain protections that they have under public housing and transfer those into the RAD program.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that, you know, in light of the gentrification conversations that a lot of Minneapolis residents are having, where we're seeing the shrinking city in terms of the inaccessibility and inaffordability of Minneapolis homes and rental properties for specifically Black family members and Black community members and Latino families and Latino community members, I am really interested in trying to figure out how to retain and protect that affordability, and not only retain it and protect it, but actually grow it, because we know that families have always been paying more than 30% of their income on housing. So it's not just, you know, sort of figuring out how to cap rents. And I know people are interested in looking at rent control, but also how do we actually get to human rights model of living and housing, because there's a lot of families that are paying, you know, well over half of their income on housing. You know, I meet families who make, you know, $12,000 a year, and they're paying $900 a month for a 1-bedroom, and there's probably 4 of them in there. So I just want to offer my support for you in exploring that, and I want to say that that's a really important issue for our residents, specifically our residents of color. So thank you so much for bringing this forward as a council, and I look forward to hopefully working with you and the Glendale residents to find some amicable way to move forward, because they're constantly meeting with us, and I know that they care a lot about their homes and they want to stay in the transit-oriented development areas of our city.
Thank you.
Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Russ. It was a pleasure meeting with you earlier today, and I share Councilmember Cano's concerns regarding gentrification as well as the displacement of people of color, and I think especially when we have a new presidential administration that's coming into play right now, and money will inevitably, or will likely, I could say, be short, we're going to need to be finding some new innovative techniques to raising capital, to raising long-term operations and maintenance funding. And the likely scenario is it probably can't all come from the public coffers. We are probably going to have to find some other mechanisms as well. And if we're able to 100% retain the low-income status, if we're able to retain it in public hands, but we have some form of public-private partnership that allows us to effectively improve the properties and retain them for the long haul, you were mentioning 40 years, that makes a lot of sense. So, you know, in addition, we need to be idealist about this, and we also need to be strategic based on the times that we're facing right now. And I appreciate I look forward to working with you.
Well, thank you so much.
Further comments? Councilmember Warsame.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Russ, welcome, and I wish you all the best. As you might know, I have most of the Minneapolis public housing buildings in my ward, and I look forward to a strong partnership, making sure that our residents in the Minneapolis public housing get the services that they deserve. So thank you very much, and welcome to the city of Minneapolis.
Thank you.
Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Russ, welcome. I've had the opportunity to meet with you on a couple of occasions today, and I've just been thoroughly impressed with your broad range of information, experience, and real innovative approaches to helping solve some problems. As we all know, this is just a part of the process and of the continuum of care that we're offering throughout the city, and housing is fundamental to this council and this mayor and how we operate. So this is really an exciting step forward, because MPHA is not going to be considered, I don't think, in this current arrangement as a separate entity, one that we don't have any influence or control over. It's really a partnership, and I really see that relationship expanding and becoming enhanced through building trust with the community. As Councilmember Cano said, that was a big part of the questions in our earlier dialogue. How do you go about that? How do you build that relationship? And you had some concrete examples of how you built that in all of your housing authorities that you've worked with. But it's the simple things of driving up and talking to people.
Yes.
It's the really important thing that you mentioned earlier about recognizing you're in their home.
Yes.
It's not your house that you're letting them stay at. It's their home. And that's that fundamental approach that I think is going to be really important. It's not just about having big meetings and rallies. This is really having private conversations and dialogue to make them feel understood, make them heard, as well as feeling a part of the process. So I'm very much looking forward to what you're able to do, and as you evaluate the portfolio of public housing, as you evaluate the operations in the extensive business lines, whether it's project-based, whether it's scattered site, whether it's the high rises or simple Section 8 vouchers. This is all part of the package of how we're serving our residents, and we're looking forward to your leadership in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am going to move that the City Council confirm the appointment of Greg Russ. I do want to make a couple of comments. First, I want to thank Tom D'Angelo, Clayton Tyler, Chuck Lutz, and the members of the Search Committee, as well as the Public Housing Authority Board. I'll note that the Public Housing Authority Board has residents on its board who also voted to affirm your confirmation last week. Our Search Committee also had a resident on it, and she was just wonderful to work with, which is just proof that public housing residents have a lot to offer in the management of their buildings and the operations of their buildings, because for them it's home. And I really appreciate the interaction the board has focused on in terms of involving residents in your leadership as well as in your selection process. Public housing is not about buildings. Public housing is about people. And it's about people across the entire spectrum, not just the people who live in the units, not just the people who manage the units, but the neighbors, the broader community, the city, and our region. And public housing for us is part of the continuum of housing in our community that I believe, in order to get to Councilmember Cano's question about how we strengthen our community and make sure that those lowest income people do better, is to make sure we can preserve their housing. And this part of the continuum can do better and will do better, just like all of the pieces of the continuum can do better. But this is a place where right now in our city's history, there is a crisis for very low-income people. And we really need to work together better than we ever have before to figure out how to make housing about people, not about buildings, and how to bring people together in order to understand that everyone around them has their own special, unique set of circumstances that we might not know anything about, but we know they're our neighbors and we care about them as a result of that. So I was very honored to participate in the process. I think the outcome has been exceptionally good, and I commend the Public Housing Authority Board of Commissioners for doing the one most important thing that you were asked by us to do, and we confirmed you, which is figure out who the next leader of the organization is and to support that leader in a planning process going forward so that we can make sure we remember housing is always about people. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, on the motion to confirm Mr. Russ, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is approved. We'll take it up in the full council meeting a week from Friday, and I want to welcome you aboard.
Thank you so
for
much,
being
and
here.
thanks to the committee for your support.
We'll then move to our public hearing item, which is a series of land sales, starting with item number 3, and we will move on from there.
Members of the committee, 2700 Aldrich Avenue North is a sale through the Vacant Housing Recycling Program. It was established by the City Council on December 11th, 2015. 2700 Aldrich Avenue North was acquired from the state of Minnesota as tax forfeited land for a negotiated discount of $1. Staff marketed and reviewed applications in accordance with the program manual and recommends sale to Mihai Moscovici and Pavel Paskvar for its appraised value of $12,500. The property was constructed in 1900 and is a 1,808 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home. The applicants intend to invest $39,700 in construction, which will meet the minimum requirements of the Vacant Housing Recycling Program. The Hawthorne Area Community Council received notification on October 7th, 2016, and no comments were received. I'll take any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for Ms. Kimball on item number 3? Seeing none, thank you for your report. We'll open up the land sale on item number 3, which is a sale at 2700 Aldrich Avenue North. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move approval of item number 3.
Item 3 has been moved for approval. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. We're with you.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 4. Mr. Pettiford.
Madam Chair, committee members, I have a proposal to purchase a property that we acquired in 2010 from the Bank of America for $10,000. The property has been appropriately advertised. We received one offer to buy this vacant land parcel. And that offer came in from Twin Cities Builders and Maintenance to build a 1,964 square foot, 3-bedroom, 3-bath, single-family house with a full basement and a double-car detached garage. They are proposing to sell it to an owner-occupant, and they anticipate it should sell at $399,000. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Pettiford on item number 4? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 4, which is the sale at 642 Buchanan Street Northeast. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move approval of item number 4.
Approval has been moved of item number 4. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Though that item is approved, we'll move on to item number 5. Ms. Kimball.
1715 Oliver Avenue North was acquired on October 23rd, 2015 from the state of Minnesota as tax forfeited land for a negotiated discount of $1. We marketed and reviewed the applications received and recommend sale to Alicia Barovich, who was the sole application received for this property. Ms. Barovich intends to own or occupy the property as her personal residence. The house was constructed in 1922, is a 2,907 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home that will be rehabilitated as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home at a investment of $94,300. Notification was provided to the Northside Residents Redevelopment Council, and they support the sale to Alicia Barovich. I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Kimball on item number 5? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Is Ms. Barovich here?
No? She wasn't able to attend today.
Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move approval of the land sale for item number 5.
Item number 5 has been moved for approval. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 6. Ms. Kimball.
2200 DuPont Avenue North was acquired on June 8, 2016 from the state of Minnesota as tax forfeited land for a negotiated discount of $1. It was marketed and we received 3 proposals for this property. Staff recommends sale to Blake Zokert for the appraised value of $45,000. Mr. Zokert intends to rehabilitate the property as a 6-bedroom, 5-bath, single-family home by investing $250,000 in construction. His proposal includes historic renovation of original property details. And in his application, he indicated that he definitely intends to sell the property for owner occupancy, or there is a possibility that he may owner occupy the house as his primary residence. In the review of applications, staff considered his proposal as a sale for owner occupancy. The 2 other applications that were received are not recommended for the following reasons. One of the proposals was for a bed and breakfast, which doesn't meet the zoning requirements and also required some significant investment of public subsidy. The second proposal was a proposal for rental use, and since there was a competing offer for owner occupancy, we are recommending the owner occupancy proposal. The Hawthorne Area Community Council received notification of all of the applicants on October 7th, 2016, and submitted a formal letter in support of Mr. Zokert. He is present today if staff or if the council have any questions for him. Okay. And I'll take any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 6 and invite Mr. Zokert to step forward. Mr. Zokert, you have done really beautiful work in the city. And I noted on your application that you live in North Minneapolis as well.
I do. I'm going on 14 years now.
So I just wanted to thank you. I saw a copy of the property in our report that you completed at 1621 Girard Avenue North.
Yeah, that's the most recent one.
It seems like you really have a great commitment towards North Minneapolis, living there and doing work there, and I wanted to commend you.
I do. I love the housing stock there, and I just want to see this house return to the gem that it used to be. So.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add to the
I have a little throat thing going on. If you have any questions for me, be happy to answer. But I'm not
Are there questions for Mr. Zokert?
Speech.
Okay, seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
We'll see if there's anyone else to speak to the public hearing for a land sale at 2200 DuPont Avenue North. Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move approval of the land sale for item number 6.
Item number 6 has been moved. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, guys down there. Let's have a hearty aye. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. On to item number 7, Ms. Kimball.
Chair Goodman, members of the committee, I would actually like to briefly introduce Matthew Ramadan, who's a new staff that has started with us today. Well, actually, you started a couple of months ago. Matthew is going to be taking the lead on marketing and selling our vacant structures through the vacant housing recycling program moving forward.
Mr. Ramadan, welcome. What would you like to tell us about yourself?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, just wanted to say it's good to be back home. When we left, we were working with developing the NRP program, working to develop the empowerment zone, and now coming back after being gone for almost 15 years, we see the fruits of those labors, and we just want to commend the city on having moved forward so spectacularly.
Welcome back. I'm probably the only person who had an opportunity to work with you all those years ago, so welcome back. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so 2125 Aldrich Avenue North was acquired on June 8th, 2016 from the state of Minnesota as tax forfeited land for $1. We marketed and reviewed applications in accordance with the Vacant Housing Recycling Program Manual and recommend sale to Beneficial Investments LLC for the appraised value of $10,000. Beneficial Investments LLC was the only application that was received for this property. It was constructed in 1896. It's a 3,803 square foot, 7-bedroom, 2-bath duplex that Beneficial Investments LLC intends to rehabilitate by investing $123,650 in rehabilitation. The intention of the applicant is to retain this property as rental. The Hawthorne Area Community Council received notification on October 7th, 2016, and did not provide comments regarding this applicant. I'll take any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for Ms. Kimball on item number 7? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 7, which is a land sale at 2125 Aldrich Avenue North. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move approval of the land sale at 2125 Aldrich Avenue North, number 7.
Are there any further comments or questions on this land sale? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 8. Mr. Pettiford, welcome.
Welcome, Madam Chair, committee members. I have a proposal here to buy a property at 914 42nd Avenue North. The proposal was forwarded by the proposed owner occupants. This property was acquired from Thrivent Financial Bank. It was a foreclosure in deplorable condition. It was demolished. The offerers, the Webbs, proposed to develop a single-family house there with 2,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, full basement with the double-car detached garage, which they will own and occupy. They have selected smart homes as their builder, and they are quite anxious to move forward. Their financing has already been approved.
Great. Are they here today?
They are not.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Pettiford on item number 8? Seeing none, thank you for your report. We'll open the public hearing on item number 8, which is a land sale at 914 42nd Avenue North. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move approval of item number 8.
Number 8 has been moved for approval. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Our last land sale today is item number 9. Mr. Pettiford.
Madam Chair, item number 9 is about 4131 James Avenue North. And again, it was a foreclosed property that we acquired from Fannie Mae for $13,400. The structure, again, was in deplorable condition, was raised. The vacant land parcel was advertised under the Vacant Housing Recycling Program. We received a single proposal, and SDM LLC was the proposer. They are very, very excited about building in North Minneapolis. This is the first proposal that they have forwarded. I since have received a second proposal, and they have also acquired a Hennepin County tax forfeited vacant parcel, working with the Camden neighborhood, and everybody is pretty excited about their proposed development. They are proposing to sell to owner occupants, begin 1,800 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, single family home with a double car detached garage on a standard size parcel. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Pettiford on item number 9? Seeing none, thank you for your report. We'll open the public hearing on item number 9, which is a land sale at 4131 James Avenue North. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move approval of the land sale for item number 9.
Item number 9 has been moved for approval. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll now move on to our licenses and consumer services public hearing, starting with item number 10, new business for Ecumen Mill City Quarter. Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, we have an application for an on-sale liquor license with Sunday Sales Class D by Ecumen Mill City Quarter LLC, doing business as Abaton. They're located at 428 2nd Street North in a newly constructed building. This is in the downtown west neighborhood in the 3rd Ward. Have interior seating for 139 persons and exterior for 48. Requesting hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. daily. This will be located in a building that houses a senior residence facility with ground floor entry. The patio will be along 2nd Street and directly adjacent to the new Woonerf path down to the river. This will be a restaurant with a wide variety of foods and will be open for breakfast. Public hearing is required for this application. We did notify all persons and property owners within 400 feet. We notified the Minneapolis Downtown Neighborhood Association and the East Downtown Council. We received no response for or against the application. Our review finds that this application meets all of our requirements, and we recommend that you approve it.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 10? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 10, which is a new business license for Ecumen Mill City Quarter. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of item number 10. Although this is simply a liquor license, I'm really excited about Abaton in Mill City and what this brings with the affordable housing, which is just adjacent with the memory care. I think this gives residents a great opportunity to age in place and to continue living in the neighborhood that they love. So it's an exciting program.
On the motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Mr. Wilson, to item number 11.
Madam Chair, we have an application by Huron Made Market LLC, doing business as Made Market, 511 Huron Boulevard. They seek an on-sale liquor with Sunday sales, Class B, and sidewalk cafe license. This is in the Prospect Park, East River Road neighborhood in the 2nd Ward. They seek hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. daily. Principal owners of this limited liability company are Rick Ishins and Jim Ishins. A public hearing is required for this application. We did notify all property owners and residents within 600 feet. We also notified the Prospect Park East River Road Neighborhood Association and the Stadium Village Commercial Association. We received no responses from that notification process. They meet all of our requirements, and staff's recommendation is that the application be approved.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 11? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 11, which is a new business, Huron Made Market LLC, doing business as Made Market. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Joe McCurdy. I live at 2327 Olive Avenue in Orono. I'm the general manager of the soon-to-be Doubletree Hotel, which is at that same address. The Made Market is the hotel restaurant and part of a $28 million development there. And thank you for considering our application. I'm happy to answer any questions any of you might have about the development.
Thank you for getting up and explaining that it's part of a larger development. I appreciate it. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of item number 11.
Approval has been moved of item number 11. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 12. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have another application for an on-sale liquor license with Sunday sales with Class C Entertainment by La Parma LLC, doing business as Geno's at 12 4th Street Southeast. This is in the Nicollet Island East Bank neighborhood in the 3rd Ward. This is a Minnesota company formed in 2016. Principal owner is Gene Sue. They will have 42 indoor seats for patrons and 13 seats at a service counter, and there will be no outdoor area. This will be a full-service restaurant. A public hearing is required. We notified all persons within 600 feet of this establishment. We also notified the Nicollet Island East Bank Neighborhood Association and the Historic Northeast Business Association. We received no response from that notification. They seem to meet all of our requirements, and staff is recommending that the application be approved.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 12? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 12, which is a new business called Geno's under the name La Parma LLC. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. You must be Gino.
Good afternoon, Council. No, I'm not. Josh Matthews, Director of Operations for the company. And I look forward to coming to the Northeast neighborhood. I lived in the Northeast for a few years myself and still call Minneapolis home. If you have any questions, feel free.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As my wife and I are far and away the closest residents to this particular new business location, I'll happily move approval. We're really excited about occupying that space, and I think you'll do an extraordinary job.
On the motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 13. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have an application by the Lumber Exchange Event Center LLC, doing business as the Lumber Exchange Event Center. And they are located, of course, in the Lumber Exchange building at 10 South 5th Street. This will be on the 3rd floor of the Lumber Exchange. They are seeking a Class A on-sale liquor license to operate a event center and nightclub use. The 3rd floor of this building has not held a alcohol use before, and therefore we will need a public hearing today. This is located in the downtown West neighborhood in the 3rd Ward. Principal owners are Deepak Nath and Ken Sherman. Both those applicants hold other liquor licenses in our city and are in good standing. Public hearing, notices were mailed to all property owners within 400 feet of this building. They're also sent to the Downtown Neighborhood Association. We received no responses for or against this application. Staff finds that they meet all of our requirements and are recommending that the committee approve the application.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 13? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item 13, which is a new business license for the Lumber Exchange Event Center. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. Deepak Nath, 511 River Street, longtime resident of Minneapolis. I appreciate everyone considering our application today.
Thank you for being here. Of course. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I happily move approval of this item. Mr. Nath and Mr. Sherman have been investing a substantial amount on Hennepin Avenue, and we appreciate the continued investment. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
On the motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. On to item number 14.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next application is by Mrs. Dumpling Incorporated, doing business as Mrs. Dumpling, to be located at 700 West Lake Street. They are seeking an on-sale wine license with strong beer, Class E. This space was formerly occupied by the Melio's Sandwich Shop. This is in the Lowry Hill East neighborhood in the 10th Ward. They will have seating for 36 patrons indoors and no outdoor seating at this time. Public hearing is required for this application. We notified all persons within 600 feet of the premises, and the Lowry, Carrig, Lindale, and Whittier neighborhood associations, and the Lynn Lake Business Association and the Lake Street Council. We received one response from that public hearing notification process, and that was in support of the application. Our review finds this application meets all of our requirements and are recommending that the committee approve the application today.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 14? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 14. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Are you Mrs. Dumpling?
I was hoping for that guy. I was just maiden name.
There's two people here, so one might be Mrs. Dumpling.
That may or may not be a fictitious character. But my name is Chris Jackson. I'm going to be the general manager. I live at 2707 First Avenue South, and we are excited to open our restaurant on Lynn Lake.
Great. Thank you for being here today. Is there anyone else to speak to this issue? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Katie Muller. I'm the general manager at Moto Eye, which is an establishment located next door. My question is to what the proposed plan for the trash situation was for the establishment.
So we don't answer any questions because it's a public hearing, but we'll ask Mr. Wilson that. Mr. Wilson, do you have any information with regard to the trash situation? Does the applicant know anything about that? And could you talk after offline? Yes, I do. And you could? Okay. So you can testify any way you want.
Okay, so I don't know what the site survey looked like, but essentially I think as far as I'm aware, the only plan of action at this time is to use the trash that's actually located on our property. Not something that we would necessarily be opposed to with the right plan set in place, but currently there's nothing that's set in stone or any real contact official from anyone in regards to what we should do. And this is actually a pretty big concern for us because historically, Melio's, the place that was in that location before, used our trash, and we still currently have issues with people in the area, establishments, and residents using our trash and not being permitted to. And then Melio's as well did not use our trash with our permission most of the time, and we did actually receive a critical violation a couple years back because one of their branded boxes was on the ground next to our trash can, which therefore we were not in compliance. And because we own that property, it's just we were held liable and responsible for that.
Okay, so it sounds like Mrs. Dumpling will talk to you after the public hearing, and then I would just note that if this is approved today, it still has to be approved by the City Council on Friday, so please work it out by Friday, a week from Friday. In other words, today's approval is conditional until a week from Friday. So if you could just work with the nice folks at Moto Eye on figuring out the trash, that'd be great. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move approval of this item.
Approval of item number 14 has been moved, with the committee noting that the trash situation needs to be worked out between these lovely neighbors. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 15. Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, we have an application by an existing restaurant and alcohol establishment known as the STEM Wine Bar at 24 University Avenue Northeast. They are seeking an upgrade from a Class E on-sale liquor license to a Class C2, which allows 3 musicians to offer entertainment in the premises. This is located in the Nicollet Island East Bank neighborhood, 3rd Ward. Public hearing is required for this upgrade. We notified all persons, property owners within 600 feet of this premise. We also notified the Nicollet Island East Bank Neighborhood Association and the Historic Northeast Business Association. We received no responses for or against the application. Staff's recommendation is that the application be approved today.
Item number 15 is in front of us. Are there further questions for Mr. Wilson? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 15, which is a license upgrade for STEM Holdings doing business as STEM Wine Bar. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? You got to come on up to the mic, though, so everyone can see you.
Hello.
Hello.
We just want to have jazz on Sundays for a few hours, so hopefully everyone appreciates that and comes in, and it's free.
Can you just tell everyone your name for the record?
My name is Ivy Ivers. I'm the owner of STEM Wine Bar.
Thanks for being here, Ivy.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Anyone else here to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We fully appreciate you having jazz there on Sundays, and I would love for you to have jazz on Thursdays and Fridays and Wednesdays as well. I think that's a great addition to the area. So happily support this item.
No jazz on Mondays, right?
Or Tuesday.
Or Tuesday.
Okay, I was making an example. You want to have jazz, you're going to have jazz. And no, never mind.
Just trying to lighten it up.
Yeah.
Item number 15 has been approved by Councilmember Frye. All in favor signify, or I'm sorry, 15. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 16. Ms. Roberts, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Committee Chair Goodman, council members. I'm Linda Roberts, Assistant Manager in Business Licensing. I'll be providing a very brief presentation about the amendments that are before you today. The benefit to our customers by the passage of this ordinance cannot be overstated. If approved, the amount of paperwork that the city requires food applications will be decreased dramatically, and the forms themselves will be much more streamlined. Applicants will no longer routinely be required to submit forms for financial records, for leases, 10 years of work and residential history. However, it's important to note that if it warranted, we could ask for those things. For example, if there's additional scrutiny required because of incomplete applications, or the application they did provide contains falsehoods or criminal history. Approving this ordinance not only reduces the paperwork, but we hope that the application process itself will be less cumbersome. Currently, the submission of our food application is required in 2 parts, which means applicants have to come twice to the city. And reducing these things now will require them only to make 1 visit or a visit at all, which is of great benefit to our customers. You might ask yourself, why are we making this change now?
Because of albums.
You know the answer already. Yes, I'll say it.
Elms. Omnipresent Elms.
Elms. It's our system, enterprise land-based management system. Configuring Elms has given the city an excellent opportunity to review our business process and requirements, and to look at it with a lens of business made simple and make right-sized regulations when needed. And this is needed. If the amendment passes in a not so distant future, applicants will be able to be done perhaps even online with computerized applications that contain all of the relevant information that city departments like the health department, zoning department, permits and licensing need to review their processes concurrently in a transparent process that we all can track, even the council. This is a new system. We went live on November 14th, so please be patient with us as we learn the design and how best to serve our customers in the transition from our old processes to our new processes. I want to thank Joan Hamill of Business Licensing. She did an extraordinary job streamlining our application and making it easier for our customers to fill out with all of those principles in mind. And I also want to thank Al Hansen and Brad Carter of our CPED Development Services. They both did a lot of out-of-the-box thinking when we configured ELMS and put our customers first and business made simple first, so that our processes within the computer system can be as thorough as needed to maintain a safe and thriving, livable city, all while making it easier for our customers. Public hearing notices were sent to all food businesses and all business associations on November 9th. This amendment was discussed multiple times at the Business Advisory Group and received very favorable feedback. Although we did not receive any public hearing responses, staff is recommending the amendments be approved, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Roberts? Seeing none, thank you for all your work. It was a monumental effort, and it's unfortunate we had all of these businesses come forward for their licenses and renewals, and if they had heard it would have been easier in the future, maybe they would have waited. I think it's a really positive thing. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on item number 16, which is the food license requirement ordinance changes as a result of the ELMS process going into place. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Council Member Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of this item.
Approval of item number 16 has been moved. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We're going to move on to item number 17. I do want to note there is a quasi-judicial public hearing agenda with 3 items on it, plus 2 discussion items after that. Yet today. This is long for our committee. Mr. Rumpy, welcome.
Madam Chair, council members, Mike Rumpy, Deputy Director of Housing Inspections for the City of Minneapolis. I'm here to just give a brief outline on the Intentional Communities Ordinance and how it would we would regulate through our organization. I'll give kind of just a brief overview and then take questions. Applications are required, and what are required now, those applications are actually outlined in the ordinance. Rental properties and non-rental properties can apply to be intentional communities. However, with that said, rental properties have some requirements if they so choose to go this route. One, a rental property owner cannot be a tier 2 or tier 3 rental property owner and apply. They would be denied. Number 2, a rental property owner would be limited to 1 intentional community as part of their portfolio. Rental properties, the other part is this is important, is they would still be required to maintain a rental license, and this would still keep them in our regular cycle of inspections based on their tier rating, and in this case, it would be a tier 1. So about every 6 to 7 years, we would be in the property no matter what, unless we had complaints. As part of the process, we would require an inspection upon application for rental and non-rental properties. We would look at life safety issues within that property, also look at means of egress, number of bedrooms, and things associated with life safety. Upon receiving that application and doing the inspection, ultimately, a maximum occupant load would be determined. And that would be a combination of what we see at the property and using current standards in the building code. At that, I'll kind of open it up for questions, but I tried to keep it as simple as I could.
Okay, are there questions for Mr. Rumpy? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rumpy. I got a ton of questions here. So the initial inspection where we're determining that it's got adequate ingress, adequate egress, number of bedrooms, occupancy total for this particular abode, I get that. But we've got a whole list of other things that we're also going to be looking at that I don't totally get. So I can just kind of go through. First it says, so this is in 244.820C. It says, for purposes of this section, family may include a group of 2 or more unrelated adults living together in a dwelling unit when operating as an intentional community. Factors that shall be considered, it says shall be considered in determining whether a group operates as an intentional community include, and then it goes through a whole list of other things. Are we considering these things or not considering these
We
things?
would be considering those things along with the life safety portion, which for us obviously is the most important thing. As the application, the example would be, the application could come in and say, we would like to have 9 like-minded people that would like to live together in this property. But as we go out, I get 1 legal bedroom, we're going to have a hard time saying we can have 9.
So here's where I have an issue. I mean, I'm all for 9 like-minded people living together, whether or not they're related. I'm all for 9 people that totally disagree on every single thing in the world living together, regardless of not whether they're related. The issue that I have a problem is, first we're saying that these issues shall be considered. So are we requiring the following criteria or not?
Yes.
Then we should say that. I mean, if I don't agree with the criteria at all, I'll say, but the fact that we're just saying shall be considered, I think is extremely ambiguous. So it says we're going to consider, for instance, whether the members of the household have adopted a set of rules covering democratic governance. What does that mean?
For us, we would ask that they have that. If they've had that information, we would ask them to provide it. That, again, that would be as part of the application process. We want to make sure that they at least have these things in place.
So what would it say? And what would, I mean, they have like a charter, like a constitution of the premises?
Yes, and you know, they have a set of rules, guidelines, how they split money, those type of things. We've never seen one before, so it's kind of, for me, hard to say exactly what it would look like or what would be acceptable.
I have seen these things before, and it's a summer camp, you know, and it's you got a chore wheel, and you know, Janet does the sweeping on Monday, and Frank does the sweeping on Tuesday, and if it's a co-ed camp, and you know, but so are we going to enforce to make sure that these constitutions of the communities are enforced?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, we're going to look to see that they're in place. It's not something that we're going to regularly go out and look to see that, you know, every day that they're abiding by their constitution or their rules. We just want to make sure that an initial set of rules has come forth with the application.
So, I mean, what happens if the constitution that they've set up is not really a democratic process at all? What happens if all of the power is given to one particular individual that happens to be a little bit off the rocker? What happens if the people that are supposed to be buying the milk this week didn't, and someone's calling in and saying, hey, Otis didn't buy the milk this week? What are we going to do about that? Are we going to do anything?
My take on that, ultimately, first, it would be a civil issue among the parties. But if, you know, we had some type of ruling or something that said that they're no longer abiding by it, we do have the ability in this ordinance to take away that intentional communities designation.
So I would agree with you, it would be a civil issue unless we put into place in an ordinance. And if it's in place in ordinance, then the individual that was supposed to be the recipient of the milk on that particular week could call in and complain and saying that they're violating the Constitution. It doesn't make any sense, and we should take away the license. And are we going to take away the license because of that?
I would hope not.
So, I mean, here's my point. My point is that I'm all for intentional communities. I'm all for the increased density. I'm all for the occupancy levels being upped, assuming that there's adequate bedrooms and lighting and windows and everything else that you need in order to have habitable conditions. My issue is that if you go through every single one of these issues, we're not going to be enforcing this stuff. Let's just be honest. We're not going to be enforcing this stuff, so let's be honest about what we're actually doing, which I'm for, which is increasing the allowances for density.
Councilmember Fry, Mr. Rumpy didn't come up with this in his office.
I know.
just to be clear. So expressing a frustration with him probably is...
I know, and I didn't apologize to
He's animated.
Yeah,
it's good. I am one of the co-authors of this, and so I'll just explain to you as I understand it. There are groups of people living together who are like-minded. I would perhaps describe it like a kibbutz, or like a way that people have lived together that are not related by blood. That seems to be the big issue here with regard to our current code, is that you can have four people living together if they're related by blood in a house, but if they're not related by blood, you can't, which is a little kooky to me, because you could have two parents with 4 kids and they each have 2 kids and they have 16 cars and we don't care. But if it's 4 unrelated people with 5 others with 2 kids with 16 cars, we're really interested. And so I think this is kind of a way, all of these rules and regulations that they might consider are a way to determine whether or not these folks are living together collectively or not. It's not really a way to have us be the police of who picks up milk, as much as a way for us to determine if they see themselves as a group, because we're giving them special dispensation to go around occupancy under the zoning code within the building code. And so Mr. Rumpy has assured Councilmember Gordon and I, as I understand it, that we're not going to have 6 people living in the dining room as their bedroom. But there could be 2 people in a bedroom, or 2 people in each of 4 bedrooms, and that goes around the zoning requirements. So that's why there's a list of things. I don't think the list of things is really much other than a way to define what people who are collectively living together, how they see themselves. And perhaps you have a whole other list of questions, so I'll let you do that. And perhaps Councilmember Gordon, I'm not an expert on folks who are living together in intentional communities. I jumped into this mainly because I want to see people living together not defined by blood, and let people associate the way they want to associate with each other, as long as they meet the building code requirements for occupancy.
Madam Chair, so the last part of what you said, I agree with 100%, allowing people who are not related by blood to live together so long as they meet certain occupancy requirements, whatever those occupancy requirements are that we set up. What I don't get is setting up this massive framework to leap around what I believe we should have the guts to do anyway.
Well, this ordinance does not eliminate occupancy, and that's not the conversation that Councilmember Gordon and his office has had with neighborhoods as they've been out there. So I think that they were thinking of this as a first step towards taking a use that was already in place and, you know, making it, for lack of a better word, kosher or allowed, and then trying to determine out what the next steps would be. But I'm not the intentional communities expert, so perhaps Councilmember Gordon can speak to that.
I yield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. I also appreciate the questions. I think the intention behind C and actually D was to help us get a better common understanding of what an intentional community is. I don't think it's massive requirements. I think these are some general guidelines of what we're going to take into consideration, what a household should take into consideration if they're going to register. And this is it's more of a self-identifying registration process. And so if you fit generally the categories outlined in section C, and if you're not doing those things that are outlined in section D, then coming forward with your registration makes sense. It's a little bit like the domestic partnership registration that we already have on the books. We allow people to self-identify themselves as domestic partners. They fill out a registration form and they give it to the clerk. Once you've done that, you are now considered, in all intents and purposes, a functional family, and you're not subject to the same over-occupancy rules that you would be if you're unrelated. Minneapolis did that years ago. It made a lot more sense when same-sex marriage was against the law, but some people are still identifying that way. Even different sex couples decide they're going to register so that they're, feel comfortable about living in their household. That's more what this is. It also then gives us a tool later, because you fill out your registration, you get it notarized saying we're an intentional community, here's kind of our guidelines and our rules. And I'll just note, if you're a cooperative, and many of these will be, then you're basically going to have everything written out ahead of time, and you just refer to your cooperative rules that you already have in place, and makes it easy. But then this will be in place, and it will give us something to go back to if suddenly there's questions that are raised where somebody who lives in the household says, hey, we're not really operating like this at all. We can look at the guidelines and the registration that they said they were doing and check on them. But it's more of a self-identified commitment that they're making. Then we can review what they say they're going to do and say you qualify as a intentional community, and then you can move forward with the next step. So that's kind of the intention.
Councilmember Frye.
What was the term again before we had marriage equality? I literally forget.
Domestic
the term. It was
Domestic partnership. It's still on the books.
So yeah, I mean, the domestic partnership at the time I think made pretty good sense. But the reason we implemented domestic partnership is at the time collectively we didn't have the guts to say we need to have full marriage equality. And I think this is kind of the same situation here. I think that we need to just quite simply take the next step, because if at the end of the day we are going to be adjudicating some of these intra-housing disagreements, I think we're getting ourselves into problems that we don't want to be inserting ourselves. I mean, because at the end, you did say at the end that the purpose of this is to be able to, if somebody comes to us and says, hey, you're not really operating as an intentional community, maybe they're an unintentional community, maybe they just haven't quite met all these criteria. I think a lot of these issues are going to be brought by someone who's either living in the house or was recently living in the house and for some reason got the boot. And then we're going to need to go in and determine, we're going to need to go sort through their dirty laundry. I think it's a bad idea. I think the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm kind of talking this through in my head. It's a bad idea. And again, I'm all for increasing the occupancy requirement, or I'm sorry, allowing for these individuals to live collectively together.
So, Councilmember Fry, in the, I don't know, year that this has been going on, we have looked at the issue of eliminating the occupancy requirement, but there's just not a lot of enthusiasm for a variety of reasons to go there. Some of it has to do with the fear of rooming houses or boarding houses. Some of it has to do with over-occupancy near colleges and universities. So even in the community meetings, there wasn't a real sense that we should just be eliminating occupancy requirements. And so I think what Councilmember Gordon is trying to do is take a group of people who are self-identified as groups of people living together and get them out of the potential crosshairs of the government coming in and telling them they can't live together. It's innocuous, right? I mean, there's how many groups are actually going to fall under this category. It's just trying to make their living situation legal as long as it meets the building code requirements. There could be a larger conversation about occupancy, but you will find, as Councilmember Gordon might tell you, that there isn't a lot of support at this point right now to just lift the occupancy limit, because people who already have problems with rental housing potentially could have more problems, and we already have so many problems and not enough staff to deal with it, for example, on the north side. I think Councilmember Gordon thought about bringing this up years and years ago, and there wasn't even support at that time. So things do change over time. I don't know that we're ready to just eliminate the occupancy requirement, so I believe Councilmember Gordon brought this forward as a way to solve this narrow problem. And I suppose if we put it in place and we get problems from that, then Councilmember Gordon will need to adjust based on that. That's why I see it as kind of a no-brainer. Doesn't make sense to me why we wouldn't just do this. Not having it, that's like saying we should raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour. That's the ideal. 15 might do, but 20 is the ideal. So let's don't raise it at all because we can't get to 20. This is actually a pretty good thing.
No,
that's why I put my name on it.
I appreciate the analogy. I think it's dramatically different. This is not a matter of simply getting rid of the occupancy requirements or maximums.
Yes, it is.
I'm saying it could be a matter of raising the occupancy requirements, and for the inspectors to, at the very beginning, just like you're anticipating and planning on doing, you go into the home, you figure out what are the number of windows, what is the square footage, what is the maximum occupancy that this particular house can handle, and we're going to be doing that with this intentional communities ordinance, and I fully support that. It's a good idea. And that particular occupancy could be greater than the occupancy would otherwise be allowed. Now, I support that piece. The piece that I don't get is the democratic governance, the sharing maintenance responsibility and other household items, the making sure that everybody's got a voter registration and a driver's license for this particular home, the filing of receipt and tax documents. It's sharing expenses for food. Why does it make it a better household if people are sharing expenses for food than if they're not and the same number of people are living there.
So perhaps there's a public hearing, and perhaps there are
Maybe I'll
people
get some
here
good
who want to
arguments. All right.
address that issue. I will say, in the, years past, like 50 years ago, in neighborhoods like the one I represent, there were homes with 8 bedrooms, and landlords came in and turned them into rooming houses, and each of the 8 bedrooms had 2 people living in them. And so in an R1 district, a single family district, 16 people were living in one house. They had no commonality with each other. And I think people felt that that helped deteriorate the quality of a neighborhood because it was a very, very high occupancy. So they reacted by throwing it in the opposite direction, by saying, okay, you can't have more than 3 unrelated or 4 unrelated people. And now we're talking about moving somewhere in the middle, but this ordinance is probably a first step towards that. I think if you went out to neighborhoods, even neighborhoods that don't have big, huge houses, you'd have an outcry of people in R1 neighborhoods saying, just let, I don't know, 8 people live in 4 bedrooms, or they might be upset about that. Who knows? We didn't go out and ask that question. The question was asked with regard to intentional communities. So there are some people who have signed up to testify. I don't know if they're for or against or live in an intentional community. It's just their name. So why don't we let them do that?
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So we have a list of people who have signed up in advance. I'm going to open the public hearing on item number 17. And I will note that the first person to speak is Charlotte, followed by Joseph and Troy. And since you've heard some of the conversation, if you wouldn't mind addressing some of the questions you've heard raised, that would be great too. And if you wouldn't mind yielding to questions from members of the committee, let us know that. We won't ask you any questions if you don't want to yield or answer questions. So we'll start with Charlotte Collant. Okay. Okay.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, absolutely. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Tom Pearson. I'm at 2205 Bloomington Avenue South in the 6th Ward. Thanks for making the time on the agenda today. I appreciate it. So I want to give you a little bit of background on the Minneapolis Coalition for Intentional Communities, which formed with the purpose of trying to bring forward supportive policy along these lines. And then I want to address some of those concerns, because some of this came up on the Planning Commission meeting as well. The coalition formed 21 months ago with the idea to try to support policy along these lines. The main purpose was to look at permitting people, regardless of their blood relation, so they could cohabitate safely together based on their mutual arrangement. And it was specifically not formed to alter density because we knew it was controversial in the past and we didn't see our ability to really influence that. But we thought we could have a conversation about mutuality. Several of these intentional communities exist, and then we could also look to other cities where many of them existed at scale. And the ones that exist now, the greatest barrier to them is this occupancy requirement in the zoning code. Often they're in historic buildings and they can't fully occupy those buildings. Those that can only do so because of certain exemptions that are allowed or because they've undertaken costly construction to create redundant kitchens and other things that to basically make it appear to comply with the zoning code when they really treat it as one functional unit. There are several that operate in secret because they're afraid of the consequences of having their housing situation discovered. Now, this makes their housing less stable and provides them with ultimately less negotiating power and less rights with respect to their landlords. Indirectly, we've observed that these communities create more affordability and also improve livability in the communities they operate in. Now, we can observe that anecdotally here, but it also is in several other cities where hundreds of people are living in communities like this. And there has been studies showing that low-income and very low-income people have ability to afford the housing they're in. And it's not just naturally occurring affordable housing that serves moderate income people. It actually can serve low and very low-income people in practice. The way we went about doing our work is we consulted with neighborhood groups to understand their hopes and concerns around this, and a lot of the density concerns came there. We also consulted with organizers and housing advocates that work primarily in populations that experience persistent discrimination in housing. We wanted to understand their feedback and concerns and whether this would apply to them. We tabled at open streets throughout 2015 and we're across the whole city at all the open streets. We also had open houses and tours of intentional communities so folks could come visit the sites, and so some
some of the stakeholders did that. I think this proposal is solid because it creates a safe mechanism for the intentional communities to register, while it also creates some protections for the tenants and the neighbors. The two provisions that came up in the Planning Commission that I want to speak to, and I think get at what you're talking about, Councilmember Frey, is that Commissioner Rockwell suggested striking democratic governance and a notarized statement from the landlord and the tenants from this, and I don't think either should be removed. I think they should both be retained, and it's because they both serve as protections for the tenants if there is a grievance, or as you're saying, if somebody doesn't buy the milk on time. So I think your interpretation of this becoming a civil matter first and really not going to regulatory services is appropriate, and that's also why the notarized statement is there, is so that the administrative law judge or the mediator, whoever's dealing with that encounter, has something to go back to. Democratic governance is not well defined. It's very intentionally broadly defined, and the essence of it is mutual agreement. And cooperatives face this when we go to administrative law judges around conflicts that have fractured the cooperative membership. And often what the judge does is makes a vote occur between all the members to decide how to resolve the dispute, and that's the decision. So I think a lot of the disputes, if they did ever occur, they would have a pathway for the grievance to go through some judicial arm or through mediation without ever coming back to regulatory services. I think some of the concern that you're addressing is about interpretation of the language about the considerations. And as I read them, and I hope this is how regulatory services reads them, is that these are things that may be considered. Not all of them would have to be in place. So for instance, I could have my driver's license at that address, but end up filing my taxes at a different address, maybe my parents' address for some reason. And if you look at the language, I think you might see that there's some ability for some flexibility there, which then gives regulatory services the ability to say, no, you're trying to avoid accountability internally, and so this doesn't seem right. But we made the laundry list of all the different things that they could consider so that they could see what to embrace, because these communities are very diverse. They come in all shapes and sizes, and it's really about the mutual agreement of what the people living there want to do. And I guess the final thing I would like to say is I hope you pass this today and that you forward it to the City Council and then evaluate the results of it. There are a few dozen of these communities now. We may have a few dozen more that end up popping up out of the woodwork again because they're operating in secret. And then we can evaluate what of this works, what doesn't, how do we trim it back. And in the next cycle, we can look at things like density and occupancy and other issues that really go beyond the scope of this.
Did you have a question?
I have a couple questions.
Would you be willing to yield for a question?
If not,
you do
that's
not
fine.
have to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot your name, sir. Mr.
Tom Pearson.
Mr. Tom Pearson.
Yeah.
Mr. Pearson, thank you. I really appreciate you coming and articulating and clarifying a lot of these items. So if you had two options in front of you, and one of them was to simply allow all of these intentional communities that are presently existing to continue existing and allow others to commence, that's one option. And then the other option is to implement all of these additional restrictions. Which would you prefer?
Today I'm coming to you as a representative of the coalition.
I understand
So
that,
I would
yeah.
prefer that you pass this as is.
If I were to ask you, without your representative of the coalition hat on?
Well, it just seems that the other thing you're proposing may not actually pass the council. And I would rather
okay.
have something.
So that's a good point.
This
So,
year
yeah.
rather than nothing for several years.
So I entirely understand what you're saying. So this I'm hoping I agree with you. Actually, I don't know whether it would or not, but you know, so at the end of the day, really, this is more of a controversial / political question than it is a policy one.
Right.
And I appreciate your candor.
Thanks.
I'll wait to make my other points.
Okay, we'll take Charlotte next.
All right, hi, my name is Charlotte Calanti. Thank you for hearing me. And I guess for me, the stakes of this ordinance passing are really about cooperative development in the city of Minneapolis. I myself live in the Students Cooperative, which is an intentional community of about 30 people, 30 students on University Avenue. And I can talk about my personal experiences of it being very empowering to be like 1/29th of a homeowner in college, and how for me, it's really important to have a say over the rules I live by. But more than that, this is about like affordability for people who are shut out of homeownership and who are shut out of mainstream economic institutions, like students who have a lot of debt, and also historically co-ops have been there for marginalized groups, whether through racial discrimination or age discrimination, as a tool for homeownership and as a tool for neighborhood stability and stopping gentrification. So when we talk about how we're going to address those problems in Minneapolis, I don't think you can talk about that without talking about this ordinance and about talking about how these kind of intentional communities create co-ops. And so that's really important to me for you to understand. And I think it's in line also with the Aging in Place initiative that Minneapolis wants to promote, in the fact that older people living together, maybe like 5 unrelated older people living together, like that's an intentional community. And if you want the city to be friendly for older folks, then that's really necessary. And for older people to have a say over the way their living conditions are. I don't really think I need to extol the benefits of cooperatives. I think that they're pretty, evident. The UN has talked about it. The city of Minneapolis itself has designated like the first week of September as co-op week. So for me, it's like, if you don't want this to be empty lip service or kind of tokenization, then you actually need to pass laws that are going to promote cooperatives. And the reason, Councilmember Reich, I remember you asking this question in the beginning, why isn't this ordinance just about making an exemption for co-ops? And the reason for that is that a lot of cooperatives don't have the wherewithal to just up and start and incorporate. It kind of develops out of more nebulous collectivist structures where people are living together in houses and then come to the realization that they can be homeowners and that they can promote economic justice and neighborhood stability. So for me, those are really the stakes of this. And I just to echo what Tom was saying, passing this now is going to really change a lot of people's lives. Like I know the Students Cooperative will start another co-op for older students if this passes. If this doesn't pass and we wait for 3 years, it's just like, what's the point? I don't know. This can happen, and I think your fears are real, Councilmember Fry. But I also think they seem small compared to the potentials for cooperative growth and economic justice in this city. Thank you.
Joseph? I'm sorry, Joseph. I'm terrible with my glasses are terrible. Joseph Walls? Okay, sorry. You don't have to, but you're welcome to.
Sure. Yeah, I organized a group of intentional communities, a network over Facebook, and this is one of the #1 issues for them. I have operated one and now 2 intentional communities, and both of them legal, both of them within the zoning, but most of them have this issue. And so this is a very real issue for a lot of them. A lot of them would like help in doing this because they're doing a lot of good work in the community as far as making housing affordable, which is, I know, one of the issues that you guys have been talking about. And so this is a tool in the tool belt of putting in the hands of the people of Minneapolis to potentially create affordable housing for themselves. Also create, for a lot of people, it's an issue of wanting to be more communal and not, our society is very individualistic. And so it's just one of those things that I think would be good for the community as a whole, having groups of people living together in a responsible way. And I think that's why we've applied some of the things is to make it a very responsible way to do so. Actually, Mr. Grumpy's been to my house, and I'm actually doing something a lot of intentional communities can't attempt to do, and that is go the legal route of creating individual kitchens, bathrooms on each floor. And so it's been a year and a half of my life, and it's been very expensive to the point that it's drained out almost all my financial resources, all because I want to live in this way that I find very enriching. And there's a lot of cities that don't have these restrictions as well. San Francisco, Seattle, for instance. So it is worth having a good conversation maybe about zoning, because that's the primary issue at hand is the zoning issue. So, and I'm happy to ask any questions about intentional communities as being a caretaker of one.
Sounds like there aren't any questions, but thank you for being here today and for your testimony. And it's just Troy here. Someone please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Troy Benjagurtis, 2508 17th Avenue South, Minneapolis. And I didn't quite realize I thought this would be a really simple thing. And then I realized this issue is extremely political. And I think if you really tried to make the perfect thing, you're going to have something worse than the last election. Just because, so some of my background is where I grew up, the biggest business was a farmers cooperative. But then I went to a small city, Ames, Iowa, and the biggest business was a rental property. And there was one guy, one family, one real estate tycoon that owned most of the rental property in Ames, Iowa. And it kind of irritated me. And the other thing I also saw at the same time was between Ankeny and Des Moines, I saw all of the world's best farmland getting turned into cookie cutter housing developments because it was profitable. And so what I ended up doing was I bought 2 homes in Ames and I decided to start an intentional community. And I've had limited success with that because it's hard to find the kind of community in a smaller town like that. And second of all, there's this issue of this sort of arbitrary, you can't have 3 people who aren't a family, more than 3 people who aren't a family living together. What I ended up doing is in those 2 houses now I have a intentional community lease that says I have one house right now, I have 2 tenants and they each have a lease where they pay a portion of the rent and they get a room and they get shared use of the rest of the space, and they can decide. I don't really care how they decide, but I try to find, part of me for my financial benefit, when I look at what's going to be a good investment, what's going to maintain the property values, and that's really what it is. This is about property values and who gets to take advantage of the increase in that value. This is really important. Who gets to take advantage of the increase in the property values? Because the vision that I really want to see is I want to see hundreds of cooperatives on Minnesota equity crowdfunding portals where people in the community are investing in their neighbors' ability to own their property, to own their future. That's what I really want to see, but that's a really kind of a long thing. And I think it's sort of like what this is maybe is a consensus but imperfect step towards that direction. Then I have a whole bunch of other stuff, but it's about property values, because I think the reason we have these limits of, well, we can only have a family of, or you have to have no more than 3 unrelated people, is because people want to protect their property values. And when all of a sudden, when a high density development comes in next to your residential house, your property values go down. And that's part of the rationale about why do you want to have something. Whether or not you can enforce it is an entirely, this is a whole nother can of worms. But we don't say anything right now if a family is, the head of household of a family is a little off his rocker and is, whatever. There are other things. There's civil law. There's other laws that take care of that. And it's I can see that there's a potential that there's something to work through. That's why we have the rules that are written in there about what this is. But I guess to me, really what I see, Mr. Frey, what I think this will look like is we're going to have a lot of equity crowd-funded cooperatives that are going to start revitalizing neighborhoods and cleaning up places, because these people they're there, they're invested. They're not just got somebody who's paying a rent check every month and are going to move on to the next newest, nicer building as soon as this one gets sold. They're going to be invested in maintaining the neighborhood. They're going to be invested in paying their property taxes. They're going to be invested, and they're going to be politically active.
So can you sum it up?
What's that?
Are you done?
Yeah, I think so. So,
Okay.
So I guess the other part of this is I've lived in an intentional community. I've tried to start one, and I've kind of got ahead of halfway successful doing it. So I've got some experience, and you know, the fact that one of the things right now is there are intentional communities in this city that are afraid to say anything. They are afraid of retribution, and you know, I don't have that problem because I am, you know, the place that I have still fits under that 3-person.
Great. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Oh, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. And we did get about a dozen comments that were submitted to the public record that were put on the city's drive for council members to look at as well. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yep, my name's Kyle Cuppy, address 2000 Sharon Avenue Southeast, apartment 33, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'd just like to step back. So obviously I highly recommend that the committee approves this, the intentional community ordinance, and here's why. With my situation, I've been looking for a house to buy and actually partner with a ministry that's near the U of M. I've been looking between Dinkytown and Marcy Home. And out of the last 4.5 years that I've done research and actually looked at homes, 52 of the homes are technically illegal in how they're doing it, based on the zones and stuff like that. One of the things that I found in July 2016, there's a house, the address is 705 12th Avenue Southeast, that I'm actually looking at buying. And I'm looking to close on it come early next spring. And so this house, when it was built in 1926, 24 nuns used to live here. It was owned by the Catholic faith and whatnot. Currently today, it's an R2B zone, which can only have 3 people, but the house is 7,000 square foot. You know, so it's a huge house. I do believe that 18 people could live here, and based on this ordinance and how I'm looking at it, so like to Mr. Fry's comments on number 5, how I look at that is like that's a single family home that they have shared expenses, things like that. Like it's all based on 1 meter type deals and things like that. For me, I'd actually live there. I'd be the sole owner. I'm a very hands-on person. I'd actually look at partnering with a ministry called Chi Alpha to help fill the house and actually bring this property back to what it was built for, which was building community and growing the ministry. Those are my kind of 2 cents on it. I don't know if you guys have questions on that, or if maybe that applies better to a situation.
Well, I guess I would say if you're in an R2B, you could have 2 units, each with up to 4 unrelated people, plus an ADU. So you could have more than 3.
But how this house is set up, it's actually a single family home, so there aren't multiple units.
Then what someone else said really applies, because then you'd be forced to put in a separate kitchen, you'd be forced to put in separate metering of electricity, which is a huge expense to be able to live the way you want. So
right.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Councilmember Fry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So every single one of the benefits that the individuals that spoke have extolled are accurate, I agree with, and can be accomplished by increasing the occupancy limits to allow the intentional communities to exist. When we talk about affordable housing, this accomplishes it. When we talk about allowing intentional communities that are pre-existing to continue, this accomplishes it. When we talk about intentional communities' ability to expand, that accomplishes it as well. I was actually over, I'm sorry, ma'am, I forgot your name. Charlotte. I was actually over at your house a few years ago, 3 or 4 years. I had a ball. And I would strongly encourage you to open another one. I think it's a spectacular setup there. I'm for it. I just don't agree that this is the way to allow you to do it. I want you to be able to practice what you're doing now. I think it works. I think it's an excellent way to build community, to help for affordable housing. You name it. I believe in the communal experience. I just believe in the communal experience without a substantial amount of government interference. And I feel like items 1 through 5 especially, and I have a question about D1, but specifically C1 through 5, if we're not going to get involved in these areas, and it sounds like we're not, let's not have them in the ordinance. You know, you just testified a second ago that, you know, well, these things are going to be considered, but oh, let's be honest, we really don't want to insist, we don't want to enforce the fact that this individual is registered to vote at this particular location. And we don't want to enforce the matter that this particular individual has a license, a driver's license that says this particular address. If we're not going to do it, let's not put it in the ordinance. This is
I feel
So,
strongly
Councilmember
about
Fry,
this, you know?
I'm going to move approval. So if
Okay.
you do not want me to move approval and you want to postpone this to continue to work on it, Councilmember Gordon and I have worked on it to death. You can do that. I'm not going to amend it on the floor. We're not going to change occupancy here today or in the next cycle. So, and I actually think I, as one of the co-authors, basically required us to go out and have some large public hearings and encourage people to come. And the reason there wasn't a lot of objection is because it was written the way it was. So any changes you make, I likely would not agree to, because I don't think that holds faith with the communities that we asked to come together. Those are just things you want. And so I think it's important that we get something through for the people who have been living under this cloud, where we can make what they're doing legal, take a look at how it works for a year, and then make changes if need be. That would be how I would look at it. If you want to do something different, let me know what you want to do differently, and we can vote on that.
Well, you know, Madam Chair, what I would prefer to do is amend on the floor, but since that's not something you're looking for, I'm perfectly happy to go back and do the work necessary. I think items 1 through 5 should be eliminated, and that's what I would amend to do. So I would move to, I'm not moving, but what I would like to do is move to eliminate items 1 through 5, and I actually have a question about D1.
Well, I mean, we can sit here till 5 o'clock at night looking at this. We have 6 more items on the agenda, including 3 public hearing items, of which most people seem comfortable with this except for you. So if you want to amend this, then you should either move it forward without recommendation or postpone it a cycle to work with Councilmember Gordon's office on some of these issues.
I'm gonna move it forward without recommendation. I will move. You've already got a motion on the
Nope,
floor.
I said I would defer.
Okay, so I will move to move this without recommendation, with the hope of amending specifically items C1 through 5 and D1.
Councilmember Gordon, can you speak to whether or not there'd be any willingness to do that? Because if not, we might as well pass it as it is today.
So I couldn't quite hear your specific question, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Fry would like to,
Would you be supportive of this?
wants to support gutting the language C1 through 5.
To get rid of it?
No. And if I could speak to that? I think that we're ready to move forward on this. I just have to say that this is something that I've been looking at since 2008. And we went through a 2-year process. Every little piece that's in this ordinance is something that was kind of negotiated with the community. I know from a conceptual point, and I share that conceptual point, if it's a safe house for your cousin or your grandmother or your wife, it should be safe for your friend. But we have some very big houses in the city. We looked at that option. We actually measured houses in Southeast Como in the University neighborhood. We said for this house, if we just simply said we're going to go all on the housing maintenance code, people were saying 15, 20, 30 people allowed in the houses. Very concerned about landlords and what they do with those, all of those issues. It took us a long time to kind of come to this spot right now where I don't have the opposition of a single neighborhood association in the city of Minneapolis. And I could easily have written an ordinance or just lifted the occupancy and we'd have the room packed with people worried about it. You're probably right. I'm probably right. It's probably we're over concerned about our zoning code and the occupancy limits. But I don't think the city of Minneapolis is ready. I'm not sure that we'd get a majority of votes for that anyway. And I don't know if it's smart to do it right away because we could end up having such a big backlash, we'd end up never getting intentional communities like this set up so that we could actually address some of these serious concerns that are going on right now that we've heard about. This is also something that's called out specifically in our plan for aging in place. The term intentional communities came up in their plan, and they want to do this. So did accessory dwelling units. And accessory dwelling units is getting at this from a little different side. So this is intentional communities. And it's another piece of that. This would be a good, actually, I think if you want to just 5 years or down the road, whatever, look at opening it wide open. For those of you who might want to do that, and I'm not, for my constituents back in the second ward who are concerned about that, that's not my secret master plan, but it might be a good test for us to say, can these intentional communities work with these guidelines and regulations? And if they are, maybe we'll say, now's the time to take away some guidelines or regulations. We actually got a lot of pressure from a lot of different directions. A lot of people are still concerned about just letting one rental property do this. We heard from people who said, just do it like the accessory dwelling units where you have to be owner occupied. But we also heard from a lot of people who want to do it. There's no way they could afford a house, but they want an opportunity to do this. So we hammered out that compromise. Well, what if it's just one rental property owner that can do this? I mean, one property that a landlord might own as their rental property in their portfolio can do this, and also that they have to be in the proper tier where they're good performing according to our standards. So I just want to encourage the committee, and thanks for giving me all this time, and I could probably talk more about it because there's other issues that this gets at. I guess I just want to hit the one last one that's come up a couple times. We have seen house after house in the area also get chopped up, and the integrity of our historic homes is being destroyed because people are putting in kitchens and making duplexes and triplexes where they probably don't necessarily belong, and they don't even want them. And I think this is a way to get at that too. But I think it makes total sense for us to move forward with this thoughtful approach, this compromise, and see how it works. So I'm hoping that we won't end up postponing it.
Councilmember Fry, followed by Councilmember Ike.
So, you know, what I see here is that we're getting residents of the city of Minneapolis comfortable with an ordinance by including regulations that we've explicitly said we're not going to enforce. So the way I see it is it's in name only. We've said we're only going to be, this is what it says in the ordinance itself. It says that shall be considered in determining whether a group operates as intentional community includes, and then it lists stuff. So we're going to consider whether to have these things. We might not. Hopefully we wouldn't be enforcing these things. Maybe we would. Laws matter and words matter, and we should be clear about this. So I 100% support the goal. The mechanism in getting to that goal, I don't think is clear. I think it's ambiguous, and it's not entirely honest, especially if we're not going to be enforcing these pieces. And you know, with regard to old historic homes being cut up, items 1 through 5 have nothing to do with that.
So, Councilmember Fry, do you want to make a motion to eliminate those?
I do.
We'll vote on that, and then we can move forward. Go ahead.
I move to amend the ordinance to eliminate items 1 through 5, and then I'll have questions about D1 for later.
Okay, on Councilmember Fry's motion to eliminate items 1 through 5, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. That fails. Next.
I have a question about item D1.
Okay, maybe we'll.
In the interest of respecting everybody's time, I'm gonna I'll ask staff offline.
I can't. Which section is that? I'm sorry, I can't find. Oh, D. Okay.
D1. It's fine. I can ask staff offline.
Them to be a rooming house.
Yeah, you might want to ask it because I think Councilmember Gordon knows the answer.
It says a dwelling unit in which the various occupants act as separate roomers may not be deemed to be occupied as an intentional community. The question is, what does acting as separate roomers mean?
Councilmember Gordon.
Well, and I think that our reg services folks are well aware of that. Is that when everybody has a separate lease, they pay their rent separately. They come in and they go as individuals. It's essentially a rooming house.
It's not an intentional community because they're not working collectively on ownership or taxes or any of those things. That is, by definition, a rooming house. That's what we're trying to avoid. Okay, so
I have no amendment then.
Okay, I'm going to move approval of the item number 17 in its entirety with the staff recommendation. Are there further comments or questions? Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be brief. Obviously, I know this was a lot of work in the making. I've already been sort of outed in terms of my initial intentions about expanding the cooperative enterprises in the community. Obviously, this is a kind of a compromise step. I think Charlotte's commentary about this being a gateway or a stepping stone to that. Obviously, down the road, I'm going to probably press to to maybe make the that intention in the intentional communities ordinance more explicit through mechanisms of partnerships with our cooperative networks out there. I think to be helpful in that intention is to get to that end more swiftly, if not more fully. I think because this is a public hearing, I think all statements are public domain. So if there's anyone forming a band out there that wants a cool name, Nebulous Collective Structures, I think is a great candidate for that. So that's out there for public consumption. And so with that, I think, the way I looked at this when I was having conversations in my backyard, if I had my druthers, we would be expanding the cooperative framework even more aggressively. However, I do believe in this stepping stone thing. I think we can maybe refine that moving forward after we kind of cast this out for a year or two. Also, there's the downside. There's the fear. People say you regulate things because not when they go right, or you have this great sort of vision of how we're going to utopically become the super cooperative city of Minneapolis. What happens when they go wrong? What happens when it's, for lack of a better term, a flop house, when people are flouting rules, or this is a great loophole to create all kinds of inappropriate living situations or negatively impactful situations for the broader neighborhood or that block. A lot of times rules are about what can go wrong. I think we have a lot of little tripwires in here for when things do go wrong. I'd be very surprised that we wouldn't pursue things if there's a complaint. We often are pretty reactive to a complaint given system. And I imagine department would absolutely be looking to see that all the T's are crossed and the I's dotted. And if there are flouters, I'm assuming that flouters don't always follow the rules well, and we'd have them. And I would like to have those tripwires for those who are seeing this as a loophole and not an opportunity. So is it perfect? That's for time to tell. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none on the motion to approve as originally submitted, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. That item is approved. We're then going to move on to our quasi-judicial public hearings. I'll note that that is items 18 and 19 as well as item 30. So I'd like to just get a check from the committee about their opinion about the two discussion items. Should we hold staff here longer for that? Because we want to discuss them. These are both, well, the ESG grants is a good news item, and the infill housing work group are recommendations that potentially we could take up at a future date. Who's here on that? Is it possible we could take up the infill housing work group recommendations in January or not possible?
I think that would be possible.
Yes. And I'll defer to Councilmember Yang and note you are very nice to be here. This has been a long meeting and people are kind of on the tired side, and I'm a little concerned that we're not going to have a fulsome discussion about this important work where you've really made a difference in trying to figure out the future of Green Homes North. So I wonder if we shouldn't take it up when the meeting isn't as long, because we have 3 quasi-judicials right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be fine with us postponing this for another time. And I do have to say that there were many other Ward 5 related matters that I was here for. So thank you very much.
Okay, so with the committee's feedback, and feel free to give feedback, I'd like to move item 28 and postpone item 29 one cycle, and that would also trigger Ways and Means postponing one cycle also. Is that okay with the Chair of Ways and Means? Is that okay with the committee with regard to direction moving forward today? Okay, so we have dispensed of the, oh no, I'm sorry. First, we will take up item number 28 for an actual vote. Do you not, are you upset?
No, we're thrilled.
Okay. I see Mikkel here and all the good work he does. I feel bad. I'm just going to move the staff recommendations with regard to the ESG fund recommendations. There was a written report in your packet and online, and it's very consistent with what has been happening over the past few years. So on the motion to approve item 28, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. And on item 28, I'm going to move to postpone one cycle. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That was item 29. And then I'm going to turn the chair over to Councilmember Fry for items 18, 19, and 30.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one, it's 18, 19, 20, and I believe 30 as well.
20 has been, I'm sorry, sir, 20 has been postponed to January 3rd also.
But 30?
January 3rd, number 20.
So we have numbers 18 and 19. The first is a motor vehicle repair garage license for Ahmed doing business as Ahmed Certified Auto Care, 616 45th Avenue North. Here to present is Mr. Fussy. Mr. Fussy.
Well, I can handle this. This is a matter, it was a business license denial recommendation from business licensing, and it was submitted to our municipal hearing officer who drafted a findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendation that is before you, signed October 25th, which adopted or affirmed the staff's recommendation to deny this business license. I don't believe that the license applicant is here. He certainly has been notified of the hearing, and we would ask the committee to simply adopt the recommendations of the hearing officer after seeing if the license applicant is present and wishes to add anything.
Thank you, Mr. Fussy. Are there any questions for Mr. Fussy? Seeing none, I will open up the hearing specifically for the individual and/or his or her representative. This is a quasi-judicial license hearing for which this committee is limited by law to hearing argument from the owner and the owner's representative, but is prohibited from considering any further evidence or taking any further testimony. This means you are required to limit your comments to arguments specifically addressing the evidence or testimony introduced before the hearing officer, which is part of the record that is already before us. Is the individual or representative here today? Are they here today? Individual representative here? Seeing they are not, I agree with Mr. Fuss, with staff's recommendation, and I will move to approve that recommendation. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. And that item passes. Item number 19 is a rental dwelling license revocation for 3032/3034 Cedar Avenue, which is Cedric Thompson, considering revocation of the license. And here to present is Mr. Magrino.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and committee members. I'm Nick Magrino from Regulatory Services. The property involved in this action is 3032/3034 Cedar Avenue, a triplex. The respondent in this matter, Cedric Thompson, is the owner of record and obtained a license to operate this property as a rental business in August of 2006. On August 12, 2015, housing inspections conducted a routine rental licensing inspection at the property. The inspection resulted in a notice of ordinance code violations ordering corrections in all 3 units for violations like repairing interior surfaces, providing smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, plumbing fixtures to code, and providing fire extinguishers. Notices were sent to Mr. Thompson's address at 1341 Case Avenue in St. Paul. In October, November, and December of 2015, Mr. Thompson requested 4 separate reschedules of his re-inspections for those violations, and on December 3rd, 2015, a re-inspection of the property occurred and some of the initial violations were corrected, but additional violations were discovered, and an additional violation notice was issued to the owner, including obtaining permits for the fire doors that had been installed at the property. A reinspection of the property occurred on January 27, 2016, and several of the violations had not been corrected. A reinspection of the property was scheduled for March 25, 2016, but was rescheduled by the owner for March 28, 2016. On March 28, 2016, the owner did not appear for the inspection. A reinspection letter was sent to the owner setting an inspection for April 28, 2016, and on April 28, 2016, the owner again failed to appear at the property to allow the inspection to occur. On May 18, 2016, Housing Inspections issued a Notice of Director's Determination of Noncompliance to Cedric Thompson, notifying the owner that the property was in violation of MCO 244-1910 or licensing standards, and specifically Standard 8, failure of the licensee to allow required inspections. The owner was given 10 days to come into compliance by allowing the required inspection. A copy of the Notice of Director's Determination of Noncompliance was also sent to the resident of 3032 Cedar Avenue, Unit 3. We received no communication from the owner after the issuance of the Director's Determination of Noncompliance, and on July 12, 2016, a Notice of Revocation, Denial, Non-Renewal, or Suspension of rental license or provisional license was sent to Cedric Thompson at the listed address of 1341 Case Avenue in St. Paul. Notice of the pending revocation was also posted on the rental property located at 3034 Cedar Avenue, and Mr. Thompson was given 15 days to file an appeal requesting an evidentiary hearing on the matter, and no such appeal was filed. So the city is requesting revocation of the license, and at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about this.
Thank you, Mr. Magrino. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you. I will open the hearing for the individual licensee and/or the representative. Are they here today? Are they here today? Seeing that they are not here today, Mr. Magrino made good points, and I will move to adopt the staff recommendation. Are there any further comments on this topic? Seeing none, all those in approval, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. And seeing that we've handled items 20 and 30, I'll hand it back to Chair Goodman.
No, 30.
30 we still have to take. Final item is number 30, which is a rental dwelling license denial for 5420 44th Avenue South. And here to present is also Mr. Magrino.
Mr. Chair, I'll take the opportunity to present this one as, and I'll be as brief as possible. This matter once again involves very frequent litigant Margaret Capix and his ongoing appeal to the Minnesota Court of Appeals challenging the council's September 2nd denial of his application for a rental dwelling license at 5420 44th Avenue South. As this committee likely recalls, last cycle the Court of Appeals ordered you to consider his motion to proceed in forma pauperis, which you denied. The present matter has also been referred to this committee by the Court of Appeals pursuant to an order directing the City Council to consider Mr. Capek's motion for a stay of the denial of his application for a rental dwelling license at the property. Mr. Capek has been notified of this afternoon's hearings and should be afforded a very brief opportunity to address the committee regarding his motion. Initially, I would note, just for the record, that city staff would request that you deny his motion based on the following three factors. First, the motion for a stay is not procedurally proper because there is no action to stay, since the underlying matter was a denial of an application for a license which does not exist, and it was not the revocation of an existing license. Hence, there's really nothing to stay here. If there was an existing rental license that was being revoked, that revocation could be stayed while the appellate court considered the appeal, but this case involves a mere denial of an application for a license, and at no time has that license existed. Second, the legal standard for considering a request for a stay pending appellate review involves balancing the appellant's desire to maintain the status quo pending appeal against the public's interest in enforcing its decision. However, in this case, the status quo is actually maintained by denying the stay request. Again, because this involves a license denial and not a revocation, the status quo remains intact because there was no rental license at the property before the application or appeal, and there would be no rental license at the property during the pendency of the appeal. Third and finally, Mr. Capek's appeal of his rental license denial at the property is plainly frivolous and has been much of his related litigation filed in state court, federal court, and the appellate courts. As the council record reflects, the license denial was based on the indisputable fact that he had a separate rental license revoked on another property at 3324 23rd Avenue South in 2015 for illegal occupancy and other inspections violations. Based on that revocation, he is clearly ineligible pursuant to Code of Ordinance Section 244, 1910, 13B, which holds that a landlord who has had a license previously revoked may not obtain any new rental licenses for 3 years. That separate rental license revocation was also appealed by Mr. Capek to the Court of Appeals and was dismissed by that court in its file number A15-1541. Therefore, his ineligibility to obtain rental licensure this year at 5420 44th Avenue property is clearly established and supported by law, and his appeal is frivolous. Based on these reasons, staff would request that you deny his present motion for a stay after you would see if Mr. Capek, who has been notified of this hearing, is present.
Thank you, Mr. Fussy. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the hearing to Mr. Capek and or his representative, and seeing that the room is totally empty with the exception of Mr. Magrino, I won't ask a second or third time, and I'll close the hearing. And I'll move the staff recommendation for very reasonable and thoughtful reasons. Any further comment on this topic? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 All those opposed say no. That item passes, and seeing that we have no further items on the quasi-judicial agenda and the CDRS agenda, we are adjourned.